There's Mike Gill. Happy Monday. Mike Gill always comes on with us on Monday. I'll be on the Sports Bash later tonight, probably from the press box at Lincoln Financial Field by the time I call in there. But, Mike, what a crazy, crazy day of football yesterday.
We saw a little bit of everything, man. We saw overtime in the 1 o'clock. We saw overtime in the 4 o'clock. We had a pretty competitive Sunday night game and a lot of other stuff sprinkled in between. Plus, we had a bunch of I guess we'll get into it. Did the Eagles play anybody now? Does that count? Does the Vikings game being at 1 o'clock, is that a suitable Kirk Cousins time to give them credit for winning that game on the road in Buffalo? Is Buffalo not as good as we thought now? Have the Dolphins played anybody? I mean, what do we want to talk about?
Well, you know what? This is funny, right? Because I feel like Eagles and Dolphins fans have the same mentality right now. Dolphins fans are in just love with Tua Tagovailoa just breaking records every single week. They score 30 points every week. That's an exciting team to watch. And I told my buddy from Dolphins Talk, Michael Leva, we're like, dude, we're seeing it. Like the two quarterbacks, everybody said that weren't any good. Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa might be the two best quarterbacks in football this year.
Well, what we're also seeing is two quarterbacks that people had questions about add big-time talent to their roster. So are we saying that the quarterbacks aren't good? No, that's not what we're saying. But what we are saying is they've added a ton, and maybe this is the blueprint, that there is a plethora of top-level wide receivers out there, and that your team needs to go figure out how to get those guys if you have question marks about your quarterback, right? And that maybe these guys can help bring more out of your quarterback. I mean, Tua's kind of struggled along, had a nondescript career really after tank for Tua was a thing, and he is not a guy you would have tanked for. Now, sure, you would have that guy on your team, but is it because he's great, or is it because what he has around him is great? It's probably a combination of both. I thought he had great ball placement yesterday. I mean, he made some great throws, but he's got guys who go out and make every play for him. So he could just be an okay guy and probably look great. That's what happens when you have guys like that. The Eagles are reaping the benefits. Others have done it. Josh Allen, most notably. You see what happens right now. Kirk Cousins is playing at a super high level. Well, he's got Superman playing wide receiver for him. Justin Jefferson was awesome yesterday. Conversely, Aaron Rodgers has struggled all year. Well, Christian Watson yesterday looked like he was on another planet. That made that offense look completely different, although Dallas can't stop the run a lick still. And on the other side, Dallas doesn't have a wide receiver. We've talked about it before. CeeDee Lamb's very good. He's not a number 1A wide receiver, and they struggled yesterday because when they needed plays, they don't have a guy to make a play for them.
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad you brought up CeeDee Lamb because he did have a great game yesterday, but you're right. What's the difference between A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, Justin Jefferson, and CeeDee Lamb? Well, you saw it yesterday when Dallas needed a play from CeeDee Lamb in that overtime period. They just didn't get it. He was non-existent. But I'm also glad you brought the run game up too, because Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon absolutely demolished that all-world defense yesterday. And I thought that was the reason why the Packers won.
Been saying it all year. They can't stop the run. They're excellent when it comes to rushing the passer, but they can't stop the run. They haven't done it all year. They gave up 26 points to Philly, and people wanted to say, well, it was Cooper Rush. It's not Cooper Rush. Your defense had a shot to get off the field numerous times in that game. They couldn't do it. They had a 14-point lead yesterday, had chances to stop that Packers offense. Couldn't do it. The defense has some nice parts to it, but some of them are not all that good. When you have Micah Parsons that covers a lot of the other warts, and at times Trevon Diggs covers some warts. But guess what? Diggs gives up too many big plays. Parsons is a guy that can be excellent, but he can also be a guy that teams will game plan to go right at. They don't have enough around those two guys. That defense is very good in certain spots, not a playoff. I've said before, they cannot win multiple weeks in the playoffs with that defense. Too small, not good enough against the run.
This is one thing I've noticed too with the Cowboys, and this is where I think my narrative comes in on Dak Prescott. Really good quarterback, but I don't think he can win you a big game. And we saw that. It's just the little things, right, Mike? So in the first half, Dallas blitzes Aaron Rodgers. He fumbles the ball. I think it was on third down. Ron Kearse recovers it. What does Dak do? He gives the ball right back. He throws an interception in his own red zone. In the end, you can't do that. You just can't. You got to get 3 points on the board. And Dallas didn't even do that. They got zilch. And that's Dak Prescott right there.
Yeah, I mean, he's regressing. He's played some good games, but it's funny. The Dallas fan will say the Eagles haven't played anybody, and then in the same breath say, look, Dak's back, and so are the Cowboys. Well, you beat Detroit and Chicago. Am I supposed to give you bonus points for that? I like Prescott. I'm no Prescott hater. He doesn't have enough. We're talking about these teams, Tua, Jalen Hurts. Look around. Dak doesn't have that. That offense is pedestrian outside of, CeeDee Lamb's a nice player. He's not A.J. Brown. He's not Tyreek Hill. He's good. He ain't one of those guys. And opposite him, it really falls off. So, he lacks the weapons to be a better player because he's not an elite. He's just he's a good to great player at times. But if he doesn't have great players around him, he's just going to stay where he is. And he makes mistakes. He doesn't move as well as he used to. I think Dallas is, losing at Green Bay is no shame, but that offense has been hideous this year, and they put up a 30-burger against this vaunted defense. I've said it all year. I think the Dallas team is a good team, but much like everybody else in this league, they're nothing special. It's a team, it's a league filled with parity, and they're right in the parity middle.
Which is funny, too, because if you're an Eagles fan, you got to kind of root for them next week, right? They play Minnesota.
Well, yeah, and it's funny because I think I've been saying it for a couple of weeks that game on December 24th might lack a lot of meaning to it. If they lose next week, it virtually will have no meaning. They're already 3 back with a head-to-head loss to Philadelphia. The math says it. Forget what the Dallas fans want to believe. The math just says, you're talking about Philadelphia would have to lose 3 times between now and December 24th, and Dallas would have to not slip up. Look, I get it. If Philadelphia loses twice and Dallas wins every single game, then the game would have the ability for Dallas to lock the division back up, and then the last couple of weeks, I just don't know. I don't see that happening at this point. I think Dallas has more losses in them, and I don't know that Philadelphia has 3 losses between now and then. But, yeah, I said yesterday you wanted to root for Buffalo against Minnesota, and that would have been epic because then Minnesota and Cowboys really would have been playing a number 1 seed elimination type of game. The loser of the game next week would essentially have no shot to get the number 1 seed. But now Minnesota winning that game, if they can win again next week, they keep the pressure on Philadelphia. And the other team keeping the pressure on Philadelphia because they haven't played yet are the Giants.
Yeah, and it's funny how the Giants have a better shot to win the NFC East than the Cowboys do because the Giants haven't played the Eagles yet. This is crazy, Mike. So that game in Week 14 could be for the division right there. Because the Giants—
That's the game, right.
Yeah, that's the game. You're right.
That's the game that has – because next week, look, the Giants should be favored again. They're playing Detroit. And if they can get that game, now you're 8-2, and you still have Philadelphia twice. They don't have this Philadelphia has a game on us yet. They haven't played. So they would be 2 back with 2 games to play against Philadelphia. So, yes, the Giants right now have clearly jumped. Not that they're better, but they've clearly jumped over Dallas in the more dangerous category because we have winnable games to keep the pressure on you, and we play you twice. And the first game is going to be on the road. So they can possibly sneak a game and make it even more interesting, the Giants can. And look, they won in a very Giants way yesterday. They ran the ball. I think Saquon Barkley had about 98 carries, it felt like. I felt like he touched the ball every single time. But, it's not like you're looking at the score and saying, man, they demolished Houston. Houston stayed around. But that's a Giants win right there.
Yeah, it is a Giants win. And it's funny, too, Mike, because I never felt Houston was actually in that game. Even though they were in the game, it just never felt like the Giants were going to make that big screw up to lose it.
Well, and that's because the Giants haven't made the screw up all year. That's what they've done. They've been safe. They don't turn the ball over. They run it a lot. They have not had the big turnover in their games. That's why they're 7-2 at this point, because they haven't done what they've done in the past. In past years, a limited team turning the ball over is a recipe for 5-11 or 17 games, whatever math you want to put together there, 5-12. But now it's a safe team that doesn't turn the ball over. So now they keep, instead of Saquon having 22 carries, he gets 30 carries because they're not turning the ball over and losing a bunch of downs. So, yeah, the fact that they have cleaned up the turnovers has made the Giants basically turn their entire organization around.
How crazy is it to think that, I mean, every week we're getting closer to this scenario where the Giants are going to be a playoff team.
Yeah, I don't think there's any – I mean, the math is starting to run out for people who don't think the Giants are going to – I mean, if they beat the Lions – now the Lions, are a team that's always a pain in your butt. They can score a lot. They don't play great defense. So that should be a very interesting matchup between Detroit. But, that's for further on down the week. But, yeah, I mean, if you get – to 8 or 9 wins, you're at least going to be in the wild card mix. So they would essentially need 2 wins between now and after New Year's. I think it's hard pressed to think the Giants can't find 2 wins on their schedule to get to 9. I think 9 should be a wild card team.
Yeah, I would agree there. And look, the 49ers needed a win last night. They really did. If they lose, they fall into that trap with the Commanders, the Packers, the Falcons. Now they got a little bit of breathing room here at 5-4. I don't know how much of the game you watched last night, Mike, but do you feel the 49ers are starting to click a little bit here, or did you see some weaknesses there?
Well, I thought defensively they looked outstanding in the second half of that game. Credit the Chargers' offense is a disaster right now. They have no weapons. Their line's a mess. They've lost, 4 of their 6 top wide receivers. Herbert just looks like he has no confidence. That offense is extremely disappointing. The Chargers, not to mention Herbert's my fantasy quarterback. Thanks a lot. But I think the 49ers defense just looks like they're on a different level right now. They have added to the intensity. And I think offensively the 49ers are a creative offense. I thought the Chargers played good defense last night because it felt like every time you were looking up, somebody on the 49ers was getting a big a catch with a lot of daylight in front of them. But now I've said before, as soon as they made the change to Garoppolo, not because Garoppolo is great, but Garoppolo has a lot of great weapons. He's like Tua. He's like Hurts. You might not love him as a player, but he's got a ton around him, and he has a track record of winning. So Trey Lance, to me, is going to turn out to be one of the worst picks for what they gave up and what he will end up being. It's unjustifiable that pick was made, and Garoppolo gives them a legitimacy, and that would be a team to me. I was trying to think now you're starting to see some separation of who some of these better teams are. You got Philadelphia, Minnesota. I would put the 49ers ahead of Dallas. I would put the 49ers ahead of the Giants. I would put the 49ers ahead of who else would be in that mix? I mean, Tampa, they won yesterday. They're starting to feel. I would put them ahead of Seattle. I do a thing on my show called Who's In, Who's Out. When we pick the 14 playoff teams, I still have San Francisco ahead of Seattle, even the last 3 weeks I have. So, I like San Francisco, and I think that probably is your biggest concern if you're Philadelphia, especially if Seattle was to win that division and San Francisco made a wild card round and then won the game and came to Philadelphia in round 2. Dallas served that fate last year. Was not a good matchup.
I'll tell you who's out right now. The Los Angeles Rams. I think they're done. I think yesterday was the pretty much that was the nail in the coffin yesterday. They could not lose to a Cardinals team with Colt McCoy at quarterback. And
they had John Wofford playing. They had John Wofford playing quarterback. So yeah, I get it. I'm with you though. The Rams to me were out. One of those teams that you're just constantly waiting for, and there was nothing there. The line's in shambles defensively. They made the trade for Von Miller last year. How many big plays did he come up with them? They don't have that guy anymore. But to me, the offensive line and Stafford, I was not a Stafford guy. He made me, have to eat crow last year. He's the same Matt Stafford he's always been. Great arm talent, great talent, not an elevator of talent, though. When you're in Detroit and you're the number 1 overall pick, you are drafted to change the franchise. Never happened there. Well, it's Detroit. That's why you get Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford's not the Matt Stafford we saw last year. He gave us a nice special ride. It was nice. It wasn't the guy this year. Just could not elevate that team. And you're seeing a team that has a lot of problems. They can't run the ball. Their offensive line stinks. And Stafford just has not been very good. Let's be honest. He's been an average guy.
Yeah, and they haven't had any receivers outside Cooper Kupp. Oh, who, by the way, guess what? Cooper Kupp is now hurt. He had 3 catches for -1 yard yesterday.
Yeah, and Cooper Kupp is fantastic, but he's not like how do you criticize a guy who had 196 targets for 125 catches and 1,900 yards? He does it in a way that is not like game breaking. He doesn't, and the reason he was so difficult last year is because they had so much around him. So you have to put, attention once they got OBJ and they had Robert Woods. They had some guys that you can't just let run free, but you're not concerned that Cooper Kupp is going to pop the top off you or beat you with speed. He's just such a precise route runner. And look, they had a good thing going last year. That's not happening right now. And look, we see it all the time. Minnesota's a great example of this over the years. They've had a lot of fun toys to play with. Their offensive line's been a disaster, and we've never believed in Minnesota. Minnesota's offensive line is significantly better than it's been in the past, and that's why you have to take them seriously.
I'll tell you what was crazy yesterday. Now you brought up the Vikings. When Kirk Cousins had that 4th and goal, had a chance to sneak it in, I'm like, oh, he hasn't missed a sneak in like 6 years. He'll get that in easily. And then Kirk Cousins did. I thought the line gave him enough blocking, and he just didn't get in. I'm like, wow, Minnesota's going to lose this game. And then somehow Buffalo found a way to one-up them. I mean, what do you make of the Buffalo Bills right now? I think this is a super talented team, but they just keep finding ways to lose close games.
They went through this last year a little bit when we thought they were clearly the best team, and then they had a couple games. You're like, what is going on with this team? Quite frankly, I thought Sean McDermott hurt them a little bit yesterday. I think they made some bad coaching decisions in that game. But we talk about it a lot on my show, is that Josh Allen is clearly, to most people, better than Jalen Hurts, right? I mean, if I said, who do you want the quarterback of your team? The perception of Buffalo versus Philadelphia isn't your 53 versus my 53. It's Jalen Hurts versus Josh Allen. And most people would say, I'm picking Josh Allen, and therefore I think Buffalo is better than Philadelphia. Philadelphia has the deepest 53 of all the teams in the league. You might not like the quarterback. He might not be the best. Doesn't matter right now. They have the best 53-man roster. They have the deepest offense. They have the most versatile offense. They have the deepest defense. Buffalo's defense is offense is very one-dimensional. They can't run the ball. And if Josh Allen isn't at his best, they struggle. Now, he was very good yesterday, but he wasn't at his best. Too many bad decisions in big moments in that game against a team that is capable of beating you, Minnesota. So when Buffalo has played teams that have the ability to go toe-to-toe with them and take the punches, do they have another gear? Buffalo can't run the ball. They turn one-dimensional. That's their issue.
I'll tell you what, I have to agree with Chiefs fans on this, and I go on Sports Radio 810 every Monday. Chiefs fans are right. It does feel like when Buffalo plays Kansas City, that's their Super Bowl. So they always seem to win that. And Kansas City looks at the long term like, okay, yeah, we made it harder for ourselves, but we're a second-half team. And Kansas City's doing it. Like, Kansas City is leaps and bounds above Buffalo right now, in my opinion.
Well, two things. One, they're better coached. Sean McDermott's a great story. He was on the Andy Reid staff. He gets fired by Andy Reid and goes to Carolina, turns into the defensive coordinator, gets a good job. It's been a great story. He's done a great job with that team. but he's not better than Andy Reid when it comes to figuring out game plans and putting stuff together. And Andy Reid, look, to me, the Chiefs, same situation. When you talk about the Chiefs and the Eagles, you'll take Patrick Mahomes over Jalen Hurts. And that's why most people would say, I like the Chiefs more than I like the Eagles. The Eagles' 53-man roster is better than the Chiefs' 53-man roster. Their offense is more versatile. The Chiefs don't run the ball very well. They're starting, they got Pacheco a little bit more into the offense yesterday. Maybe by the end of the year, he kind of really takes over. They don't have a game-breaking receiver on the outside. It's a very tight end centric offense. Sal Powell once told me, if your best offensive weapon is your tight end, your offense is a little too limited. Well, we'll see what happens to the Chiefs in a big situation. They scored 20 points the other night at home against Tennessee. Defensively, I think the Chiefs are a good defense. I don't think they're a great defense. I think Philadelphia is more versatile offensively and deeper 53. But Mahomes is the better quarterback, and that's why the Chiefs are in the conversation, and most people will lean Kansas City.
I think for the Chiefs, you have to play strong all 4 quarters. You just can't leave your foot off the gas pedal because that quarterback and that coach are going to find ways to beat you. Everybody goes, they didn't look good against Tennessee. I'm like, okay, they still won the game. They still found a way to win because Tennessee, they decide, hey, you know what, Patrick Mahomes, we're going to play a prevent defense on Patrick Mahomes. Well, people seem to forget Patrick Mahomes can actually run the football when he wants to. So it's just, I feel like he just knows how to win a close game, or when he's down 10 in the fourth, or at any point, really, he knows how to kind of break a defense up. And that's why I think the Chiefs and Eagles would be such an intriguing matchup, because the Eagles have a defense that can match with the wit what Patrick Mahomes provides.
We think anyway. I think a lot of people are still wondering and judging the Eagles defense, have a lot of questions for John Gannon. I'm not generally one of them. I'm just saying, I know people watching the show and out in Eagles land aren't really 100% sold. Look, to me, the Chiefs, you're right, are a team that they could be down 3 scores in a game and keep coming at you because they've done it, and because of what Patrick Mahomes brings to the table. So all year we've been saying it's Buffalo, Kansas City, Philadelphia as kind of the third team. People have been asking, is Philadelphia on the same level as those two? I think they're on the same level and probably past both of them.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, how can you argue right now with an 8-0 team that they've never trailed in the second half at any point this year? I don't want to hear who they played anymore. That's a bunch of BS. They beat the Vikings. The Vikings have 1 loss. It's to them. I get tired of hearing that. And honestly, when people mention that to me, I just go, you know why? Because you want to be up there, and you're not. So you're trying.
Well, that's a good point. I contend. I'm not here to say the Eagles have played this difficult schedule. But what I contend is neither has anybody else. There just is not enough depth in this league. If you want to say, hey, look, Philly hasn't played, Dallas played the Rams. They played
the Rams, yeah.
I'm saying that's the point is at a time the perception was that the Rams were the defending Super Bowl champions. That perception is now out the window. That team is just not good. The Buccaneers, are they – okay, they're average. I mean, they could be an interesting team if they get their act together, and get healthy here with Brady. They're better than beating. It's probably, I don't know. I mean, the Buccaneers are nothing special, but Dallas played Tampa. Philadelphia does not. There's 3 games on the schedule that are opposite, Philadelphia and Dallas, that they play differently. Other than that, the schedule is exactly the same for those 3 teams. Now, you can say those 3 teams make a big difference. Well, the Rams aren't all that good. Cincinnati's pretty average, and Tampa Bay's been pretty average. That's your 3-game difference. Philadelphia played Pittsburgh. They'll play I can't remember who the 3 teams play.
Arizona's one of them.
Right, that Philadelphia plays that Dallas does not. So there's your difference between those 2 teams. But realistically, nobody's playing a whole heck of a lot. Look, people don't give credit to Philadelphia for beating Minnesota, and then Buffalo loses to Minnesota. So really, who's Buffalo played that's all that special other than they beat the Chiefs? Okay, you beat the Chiefs. That's a very good win. Other than that, what are we all that impressed by?
Yeah. So I got I'm a favorite in Bill's Mafia, right? But I kind of kicked the Hornets nest a bit last night. I'm like, Buffalo's got to worry about winning their own division. No, we don't. I'm like, yeah, you do, because you lost to the Jets. You lost to the Dolphins. Oh, by the way, they're a half game behind you. Well, now the Dolphins have passed you. You are not the 2 seed anymore. The Dolphins are. You are the 5 seed now. So, Buffalo's got to worry about winning a very tough AFC East, and they don't have any tiebreakers.
Yeah, they're third in that. This seems very much like what happened to them last year. They were cruising along, and everybody was like, man, this Buffalo team is really good. And then they hit a couple bumps, and they got pushed down, and they kind of rebounded from it. But if you remember, there was a time last year where you're like, oh, boy, this Buffalo team, what happened here?
They were 75 at one point last year.
Yes, and I feel like they're getting down. Look, I don't know. Is this going to be a week-to-week thing with Josh Allen? Are we going to be constantly talking about this elbow? Is he the same player? Is it limiting his ability to, this guy makes some, he zips some throws in there. Is that limiting his ability to be able to do that? I think that's something to keep an eye on. And then, look, if you take a look around, are the Jets a team that we now have to take seriously? I know they were on a bye this week, but they just beat Buffalo at home. Are the Dolphins a team that isn't going anywhere? I don't think they are. So Buffalo now is going to have to not only win, but hope for some help. And otherwise, they're going to be a wild card team, and that might be a recipe for an early exit.
This is why the Dolphins, to me, are a sleeper. So I've done a couple research on them in games 2 have started and finished. They have a higher yards per attempt and more points per game than like the elite offenses in NFL history. I'm talking like 99 Rams, 84 Dolphins, teams like that. Like teams where you're like, oh man, that was one of the greatest offenses ever. 07 Patriots, and they're right there, if not surpassing them. I'm like, I don't know how you stopped. Oh, and by the way, now they got Jeff Wilson in the mix. So everybody seems to underestimate how good that running game is too.
If you look, just if you're bored today at work, just pull up Tyreek Hill's numbers and just tell yourself, we're only 10 weeks through the season, and these are Tyreek Hill's numbers. He has over 100 targets. I don't know what he did yesterday off the top of my head in terms of his numbers, but going into yesterday's game, he had 100 targets, 76 catches, over 1,000 yards, and you're looking at a guy who at the end of the year could have over 200 targets, over 150 catches, and nearing 2,000 yards. I mean, that's the kind of weaponry that they're working with. And, oh, by the way, they have Jalen Waddle, who you didn't mention as well, who's right there behind Tyreek Hill. But Tyreek Hill is having almost, I say, a Jerry Rice-esque season. Jerry Rice scored 16 touchdowns in his best season. Tyreek Hill's not getting in the end zone nearly there, but all his other numbers are eye-popping. That's why that Dolphins offense. And by the way, the coach, who everybody kind of laughed at and didn't know what to think of, is scheming that team excellently. I like to talk about that Dolphins team and their defense. Nobody cares about their defense because their offense is so good. But at what point is their defense going to play a role? Well, yesterday they stepped up and really, now that Browns offense is limited. So we'll see. But that's going to be the question for Miami as they made the trade. They got Bradley Chubb. Can they get to the quarterback?
So Tyreek had 5 for 44 and a touchdown yesterday. They didn't need him that much. But this is what
they scored 40. Yeah, 39.
Exactly. And again, my buddies from Dolphins talk, they go, you do know O.J. McDuffie holds the Dolphins record for receiving yards this season. It's 1,300, and he's like under 200 away. I'm like, that's insane.
They're outstanding. Obviously, their question is on defense. Can they get to the quarterback? They added Chubb to try to do that. The first 2 weeks here, they've been last week against Detroit, they had some trouble. This week, they were much better against a team. Against Cleveland team that's really, they got no identity with Brissett. It's going to be interesting in a couple of weeks when Watson comes back with how they're going to handle all that, because that team stinks, and then you're going to throw Watson into the mix.
Yeah, we can get into Cleveland. Plenty of other times with Watson. Doesn't this, though, Mike, you remember 1995 very well when the receivers just kind of – remember it was Jerry Rice, Isaac Bruce, Herman Moore, I'm trying to think. There was another one in there that just they were insane numbers. And doesn't it feel like this year in 2022 with Hill, Waddle, AJ Brown, Justin Jefferson, Stephon Diggs, like they're just rewriting the record books.
Yeah, I mean, right now, as we talked about, hinted earlier, is if you have a average to good quarterback, is it better to try to find a quarterback to replace that guy or go get someone for that average to good quarterback to come play with, and then the average guy becomes good, the good guy becomes great? This is what you're seeing right now. There's, the last couple drafts, we kept hearing, a lot of these guys didn't work out. Ruggs is out of the league. Judy's been kind of a bust. CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Jalen Reagor. You had 5 receivers to my memory drafted.
Brandon Ayuk was another one that was picked
in the first round or high second round. And there just seemingly is so much more receiver talent. Well, you look at the college game now. I mean, people were zipping it all over the field. That kid from TCU, was it Robinson, man? Woo.
Oh, man, can he play?
Yeah, so you keep getting this wide receiver talent, an influx of it into the league, and you can – look, all of us have to sit here and say we didn't know what to think of Jalen Hurts. We were like, okay, he had an okay year last year. Can he take a step forward? He hasn't taken a step forward. He has jumped up over top of any expectations. And I don't know it's because Jalen Hurts improved by leaps and bounds. He may have, but his offense improved by leaps and bounds. This might be the blueprint for teams now, is to figure out, how do I get a weapon for my quarterback to elevate my quarterback to that next level?
Mike, I got to let you go. We're running against it here, but I'll be on the Sports Bash tonight. Do you want to come on tomorrow? Do you want to recap?
I got to let me check my schedule. I'll text you.
All right. Yeah, sounds good. If not, we'll find alternatives. But I love having Mike Gill on every Monday on Good Morning NFC East. Sports Bash today. Are you going to be at Ocean tonight, or?
I am at Ocean today. Yep.
All right. So I'll catch you there later today. Be sure to tune in to the Sports Bash at 2:00. Mike Gill will be recapping the NFL and previewing the Eagles. Thanks for coming on, Mike.
All right, guys. See ya.
All right.